And welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about Bill and Ted Face the Music. Before we get started, please hit that subscribe button. I couldn't get it out. And hit that bell. We're at 96 as of this recording, and we're trying to break that 100 subscribers. So a lot of content on the channel. We have the Kurt Russell-thon. We'll be wrapping up this week with Tombstone. We're going to be doing Raised by Wolves, The Boys. We're doing Lovecraft Country every Sunday night. So a lot of content on the channel, but we're going to be talking about Bill and Ted right now. And before we jump into all the spoilers, just a real quick spoiler-free impressions or how you felt about the movie.
It was one of those movies that I watched with my kids, and the Excellent Adventure I watched as a kid also. Bogus Journey I remember seeing right before I went to Germany, and it's one of those movies. I watched Bogus Journey way more than I watched Excellent Adventure, just because of death. Like, I liked Excellent Adventure. I liked, the whole, like, everything in it, but death himself is what made me like Bogus Journey more. And both of these movies were great, but I love that this movie took aspects of both of the originals and made it to where it wasn't just nostalgic. It was a creative premise, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same. I also went to Germany, so there you go. But I really thought that the comedy in this hit more than it didn't hit. Matter of fact, there were very few gags that I didn't that I found unfunny. So for a comedy that's relying heavily on nostalgia and based off of an 20-30-year-old property, I was impressed with the level of comedy and storytelling. Like you said, it's a feel-good movie. That term gets thrown around. Oh, this is a feel-good movie. Well, this is that. This is something you could watch with a family, and you leave it with a smile on your face. It sort of reminds me, similar to how I felt when I saw Clerks 2. Because I remember going into that a little unsure. I didn't, know what I mean? I was like, do they really need to be doing this? But when I came out of the movie, I was like, you know what? It was funny. It had, some great messages, and it just had that feel-good ending. And
definitely not Jay and Silent Bob 2.
No, I'm specifically Clerks 2. No, at some point, everything's come to an end, and that Clerks 2 should have been the end, but that's another but yeah, I enjoy this movie a lot. So now we're going to go into spoilers, and we're just going to talk about the film. So I would recommend seeing the movie.
Yeah, I would too. Because
so the way
I was saying, if it was something you were gonna see anyway, like in theater, if you just want to rent it, it's $20. If you have a couple friends over, it's one of those things that really doesn't cost all that much. Way less than going to the movie for more than one person. But for $25, you basically buy it as it came out. So it's like a straight to DVD that was theater quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, speaking of how to see the film, that's exactly. It is playing in some theaters, but it is PVOD with premium video on demand, which is a premium price for a new release. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that soon, because of the current state of the world with COVID and everything. We know Mulan is going to be like $30 through Disney Plus in about a week or two. And that's an option. With this, like you said, it's $19.99 if you just want the, I think, 48-hour rental. And if you want to own it, which I like that, that's what I went with, the $24.99.
Yeah, me too. It was $5.
Exactly. So for $24.99, you can watch this movie as many times as you want. You own it now. And so that's what I went with. And like you said, get some friends over, the friends that are in your bubble, your COVID bubble, and check out the movie. So let's see. So the movie opens. The movie gets going quick. It's in no time. The plot really kicks in. The movie clocks in at just under an hour and a half, and
I think it's 88 minutes or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's 88 minutes. The movie opens with Bill and Ted. There's a wedding toast, and I won't do it justice. Just you have to see it, but it's just a great toast because they're was it Ted's brother is marrying Missy.
Deacon.
Yes, and so it's this great sequence where basically they're just going through everyone Missy was married to and how everyone's relationship with her. It's a funny sequence, and it's a good way to set up a little humor, reintroduce our characters, get you caught up with certain things, and then we go into probably the only scene that I didn't like in the entire film was that musical number. So they do a musical number, and the only reason I say I didn't like it was it was just very they were playing it for laughs. They were playing this ridiculous song and using all these different instruments. The only part that I did chuckle was when he pulled the bagpipes out.
Well,
That made me laugh. But the rest of it, I was like, and it got me a little worried. I will admit, at this point, I'm like, oh, is this going to be sort of that kind of gaggy movie? But it didn't. This was pretty much the only scene like that.
I do not agree with that, only
Okay.
because like the Missy part was funny, and we like
Yeah.
the sequence where he was like, "Dad, now you are your own son." Like I fucking lost it. But the music thing was, to me, them trying to figure out what it is that unites everybody. So they were trying to take music from everywhere and just jam it all together. And it sounded like shit, but it was their way of trying to combine, you know, Indian music with Scottish music, like everything. They were trying to combine every style of music into one song. So to me,
Yeah.
that was actually setting the premise for the movie, which is what they were trying to do, trying to find something that unites everybody. So I liked it and I thought it was silly. Like I was hoping that it would be less focused on that, and I'm glad the direction they went. But even after watching it, that opening scene I liked more after watching the whole movie.
Yeah. I think my issue was it was a little Adam Sandler ish. The way what I mean, like the sort of specifically the music portion. And but you are right in that it sort of was a foreshadowing of where the film was going as far as combining styles and everything. And like I said, this is probably the only scene that bothered me. And I don't know if it'll bother me as much on repeat viewings, but it definitely there was a moment where I was like, oh no, well, is this movie just going to be a bunch of goofy little scenes like this? But the comedy got a lot more clever as the movie went on, and um,
Ow.
even the very next scene when Ted's father just calls them out being losers, like that scene's funny.
Yes.
So you have then you end up basically being introduced to their daughters. You have Thea and Billy, and they're basically exact copies of their fathers. Almost completely. They're into music. They don't work. They're in their, I believe they said their mid 20s.
I think they
They
said 24
Yeah, they have
was the
no
last.
jobs. They just sit around listening to music. They idolize their fathers, and yeah, that's pretty much the whole setup for the daughters.
Well, throughout the movie too, it's not just that they liked music. They were very knowledgeable because, as the movie progressed and they were trying to, get other people, the fact that they referenced a bunch of different music styles, a bunch of different, inspirations. They were talking about like Jimi Hendrix was inspired by, all these people, and even like Louis Armstrong was inspired by all these people. So I thought that it was really cool that they were smart. It was just kind of they worked just like Bill and Ted. They were just very stuck on one thing, but they didn't use that knowledge for anything other than this movie. Like it was,
Yeah.
but like you said, they were embodiments of their fathers. And the girl who played Keanu's kid, Billy, dude, I was dying because when he throws his head back Keanu, like the whoa, that she did that so many times and she did it so well. It was, I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, her mannerisms were very, very much like Keanu's. Um, I think.
I
Go ahead.
I was going to say I looked her character up, like I looked up the actress. She hasn't done a lot of stuff, and apparently she's like a musical prodigy, like in real life. And her parents didn't want her to do acting,
Hmm.
so according to IMDb, like I mean, it's not an encyclopedia or nothing, but it's
Yeah.
a lot of their information on her. I thought was pretty interesting. I was like, huh.
If I there were points in the movie where I definitely questioned if we needed these characters. By the end of the movie, I saw where they were going with them, but they're really you, there is no deep dive on who they are. There is no you don't know who they are. And what I mean by that, more outside of them and being knowledgeable about music and being Bill and Ted's daughters, that's as deep as it goes. You don't do they work a it says they don't work, but do they? And they don't even write music. Like that's sort of like they understand music, but they're not like musicians themselves necessarily. Um, I don't. It was one of those things where they were more of a to get the plot going, as opposed to actual characters.
I
Um,
don't I don't disagree with that, but I also think that they kept implying that they were basically Bill and Ted. So their backstory is very similar to the backstory of the other two, of Keanu and Alex. Like it was Bill and Ted's backstory is they were basically burnouts that weren't very good at music but loved music. I think that the daughters were like that because even when they were sitting in the garage, they're listening to music, playing air guitar and jumping around and shit, but they, throughout the movie, it's their understanding of music was so great. And towards the end, when they were using like the little beat machine, uh, you don't have to know how to play music with those. You just have to know how to mix the music to where it sounds good. Like there's not a, you know, sixth fret makes this chord. Like you don't have to know all that to use a beat machine, but it's still creative in the fact that you still have to create different sounds together. But clearly they knew that aspect. So I think that their backstory was just that. They focused on 1000% just music.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Uh, but I did find myself thinking it wouldn't be that hard to write them out of the movie. I think
Oh
it
no, I
wouldn't
don't
be
feel they
that
were
challenging,
needed.
and that, and I did think that several times while watching them. You had the wives, which had minimal part, but also had a very funny scene with the couples therapy, and then sort of which was odd. You had them jumping throughout time, also trying to figure, their marriage. They're just unhappy, basically. That's what it is. It's like they like Bill and Ted, but Bill and Ted have been they're stuck on trying to write this great song, and so the wives are just unhappy,
Well,
and then
trying
they're
to get them to move past it, and
yeah,
they're like unwilling to.
and so they're jumping throughout time trying to figure out at what point would it be good to be with Bill and Ted, and it runs throughout the film. It doesn't really go anywhere until the very end, but it was fine. It was a minor. Um, they played a minor role, but there were some funny things with the therapist. I thought.
I think that it was another just plot device. I don't think that it was super important, but even in the very beginning and throughout, the little time jumps and stuff, Bill and Ted themselves were very, very much wanted to save their marriages. But to me, this showed that the women were just as, uh, their wives were just as interested in saving their marriages as well. They just didn't know how to do it. So they were, they were to me, it was kind of, you talk about the family friendly. It was sweet that they were both in their own ways trying to save their marriages, which to me shows that it was going to work, because if they're both willing to put in the effort, then that's a positive thing. So to me, it was kind of like that redeeming, sweet kind of story that they were, both sets of them were trying to save their marriages.
The conflict in this film, which was fun, especially with some of the historical figures, was reality is unraveling, and all of like time and space will be destroyed if this song isn't performed at this specific time, the song that they have not written. And so Bill and Ted go on a quest to, they're trying to steal the song from themselves because they assume they write it at some point, and the daughters go on a quest uh, to create the greatest band of all time. So in a way, you're right. The daughters basically were a soft reboot of the first film, of them going through time, meeting all these historical figures. Where Bill and Ted were sort of on the newer storyline of interacting with themselves and literally battling themselves, throughout the future, which was fun.
Yeah, but to me, when I said at the beginning, it was its own movie, but they were also paying, homage to the first two without basically recreating it. So for them, you know, going after the band and the musical historical figures as opposed to just random historical figures, and also with Bill and Ted fighting themselves. They did that in Bogus Journey, the robot us's.
Mm.
So to me, it was a nod to both, but not necessarily rehashing it in a boring way. So
When they go to the future to get their time machine, you're introduced to Kelly, who's playing Rufus's daughter, and
Mabel.
yeah, Mabel, exactly. And which, yeah, and I thought she was good in it. The little nod to George Carlin with the little hologram, I thought was nice.
Well,
And
and like you were talking about before we started recording, the father daughter kind of tie into this entire movie, with Bill and Ted's kids, and then George Carlin, Rufus. They kept mentioning that, and she kept saying, Dad would be angry, and they paid a lot of respect to George, because I know when they were originally talking about doing this, like 10, 15 years ago, he was the reason they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to redo it because George passed away. So now that they were able to do it, I think without disrespecting George, and still you know carrying that on.
yeah, I like the character of Kelly a lot. I thought she did great throughout the whole film, and she was in more than I thought she was going to be in. I thought she would get a little scene with her at the beginning and that'd be it, but she's pretty much throughout. And yeah, like she did good. We have the great leader who is Kelly's mom, and I guess was Rufus's wife. And she's fine. She's there. She's sort of somewhat of an antagonist in a way throughout the film. It works.
Well, I was going to say that this movie, the real antagonist was just the time crunch to keep time from unraveling. Like, it wasn't, in the end, there really wasn't a bad guy or a good guy. Similar to the first movie, there wasn't really a bad guy. It was them versus time itself. The second movie, there was a bad guy.
Say the first movie, the bad guy was the history test.
Yes, it was.
it was failing. That was, but yeah, I know what you mean. The because the great leader has good intentions. She just thinks that killing them might be the way to solve the problem.
Yeah, because she doesn't know. She's like, we've tried this. They've written a song. It didn't work. At this point, she didn't know what to do. So she's trying to save basically all of time and space to where, we live past that moment in time. So she's not necessarily the bad guy. And, once she feels like they have the song, she tries to pull Dennis back, but it was too late.
Yeah. The as they're battling themselves, Bill and Ted, each future, they go like 2 years, then like 5 years, and they keep going further and further. Uh, each of those encounters, were very funny. But then I love the gag with they get to the mansion and they think, okay, we've made it. This is clearly the guys that did it, and it turns out to be Dave Grohl's house. I love the fact that Dave Grohl, and it was a Dave Grohl song. They're like, this
Yes,
song
that
is
was.
amazing, and they want them to take a Dave Grohl song back in time and use it to save the world. That like I said, there were little. That was going back to what I was concerned about at the beginning. I thought we were going to get more of this Adam Sandler esque comedy, slapsticky comedy, but then there were moments like that which I was like, okay, that's funny. That's pretty damn clever. And then there was a scene that was sort of physical comedy, but yet again, it was sort of clever, where they're trying to confuse their future selves, so they put buckets on their heads and they're like stumbling around and they fall out the window. That made me laugh as well. But yeah, that whole sequence was great. That entire scene was one of the highlights of the movie.
Well, and Dave Grohl, because the music centers or because the movie centers around music so much, to have, in my opinion, one of the greatest drummers and musicians of all time, that was a pretty big deal. Like it showed that, to me, although it is about the music, it really is, the whole movie is about music. Like, it's to get somebody like that to come in, as opposed to, and not to be disrespectful to any older music, but they didn't get like Billy Idol to come in and do something. Like, they gotta.
I like Billy Idol.
Also do
But
I.
yeah,
But
I know what you mean.
making references to Adam Sandler movies, like
Yes, yes.
him being in it, he's not a great musician. Like, I don't dislike him, but to have a movie literally centered around writing an amazing song and then have somebody like that come in, I think adds a little credibility to the movie itself.
Yeah, because I would, and yeah, I agree. I would put, this movie, focuses on the greats. Like Hendrix, for example. I'd put Grohl in those conversations. When time, you jump ahead 30 years from now, and you're looking back at the great musicians. Dave Grohl is in there. He just is. And yeah, it is cool that he had a little, had a moment in the movie. But the daughters, they assemble their musician team, and like I said, you get these nice little scenes. They're fine for what they are. They get like Hendrix and Louis Armstrong and Mozart. And the Mozart scene was probably the best, as far if you had to say what was the best sequence of their collecting the musicians. For me, it was probably the Mozart one, just because it was like a little musical battle, which was fun.
I thought I thought that was hilarious because Jimmy out there, basically because he knew the song. He's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then he starts playing it back and forth and watching Mozart have to play faster and faster, and then watching the guys in the background trying to keep up with the violin stuff was funny to me. And then, but did you watch what was going on in the background when Jimi Hendrix was playing? Dude, I was
No.
crying because watching Louis, you should go back and watch it, because watching Louis Armstrong with his dumb smile and like his dance, he's like snapping in the background. Dude, I
Oh
was,
shit! No, I wasn't
yeah, dude.
paying it.
So, well, one of my kids pointed it out to me because I'm focusing on Jimmy. He's just like
Yeah.
smiling and playing. She's like, look at him, look at Louis, and I started dying laughing because the kid's dancing in the background with Louis Armstrong. He's just sitting there like snapping, and you know it's it was a guitar solo, but he's like dancing like it's some blues. He's snapping like he's at a slam poetry thing, and dude, I was dying. It was funny as shit.
The once they collect all the musicians, we're introduced about midway through the film. You're introduced to the robot, which is an assassin sent throughout time to kill Bill and Ted by the great leader. And interesting design. It reminded me of Frieza. I don't the more I looked at it, I was like, that looks like Frieza from Dragon Ball. It even had
I,
like the purple orb thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I don't know. It looked like Frieza. I'm just saying.
I I wasn't thinking that, but I am now.
So the robots traveling throughout time, and there's little funny like mannerisms that the robot's doing, but the robot's not saying anything. It's not really doing a whole lot. It's this threat that's coming, and that's how it's built up, and then it ends up killing all Bill and Ted's daughters, the whole band. Kelly is killed. They're all murdered, and they get thrown to hell. Oh, before that, it kills Ted's dad, sends him to hell.
Dude, that
And
sequence.
going back to the Grohl stuff, that whole scene was amazing. So once everyone's in hell, the robot then it does like a very funny sort of mannerism. I'm like, damn, this what the fuck's up with this robot? And then it confronts Bill and Ted. They say we got the song. It doesn't want to kill them. Then it basically they learn their daughters are in hell, so they want to go to hell to save their daughters, and they all end up getting killed. And then we're introduced to the robot, Dennis Caleb McCoy. and I told you this before we started recording. I felt at this point in the movie, I was like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm happy with my purchase. To me, the film's a solid 7. 7. If I was going to rank it, 7 out of 10. It's a good time. I'm having a good time. I'm sitting back enjoying it on a Friday night. This would push it to an 8. The entire hell scene, like that 10 minutes of the movie, elevated it so much between the robot and death, which we'll get to in a second. But holy shit, that the comedy gold that is Dennis Caleb McCoy. And then when you told me who it was, because I didn't know who the actor was.
Yeah, because I recognized the face he made when he killed the dad. I was like, he looks really familiar. So I didn't IMDb it yet, but then when he started speaking, I was like, I recognize that voice. And immediately, like, I looked it up and I was right. It's the guy who's got like alopecia from
Anthony
Like,
Carrigan.
yeah, dude. And it's the rest of the movie. I'm not sure how much of his stuff was scripted because everything he said just felt like little one-liners, like little ad-lib parts. And if you watch Bill and Ted's reaction to him every time he said something, a lot of times they look surprised, which made me laugh even harder because I've watched a lot of the outtakes of Barry and like those shows where he's been in it. And even Bill Hader has said that he's one of the funniest people that he's ever worked with because no matter what he's saying, like you don't know what's coming and the way he delivers everything. So watching him deliver like just the facial expressions, because even prior to saying anything, like when he shot Bill's dad or Ted's dad, I couldn't stop laughing because his like oh shit face was.
Dude, he's so funny. And Barry, by the way, anyone listening to this, if you've not seen Barry, go watch Barry. Barry is not just a good show; it's a great show. I would put it up there with like The Sopranos, and I'm not bullshitting. Like it's that level of writing, as far as
It's
the
brilliantly written. It's
yes,
funny, but it's also got a very serious undertone.
very
Yeah,
very serious.
so I love that show.
It's a hell of a show, and he is so damn funny. I mean, he's up there like I'm a big Danny McBride fan. Like he's to me, he's in that realm of like if he's in it, I want to see it. He's that funny. And this whole Dennis McCoy thing, because the whole I can't do it justice, so I don't really even want to go through the whole spiel. But the comedy. This is that kind of comedy that it's subtle. It's my name is Dennis. Oh, my name is Dennis McCoy. I have a middle name too, Caleb. I'm Dennis Caleb McCoy. Like, and they're arguing with the robot about it, and then going through hell, and demons like, is that a robot? Like, how's a robot in hell? And they never answer it, which is part of the joke. How the hell is a robot in hell? And I was just laughing my ass off.
Well, when they were escaping hell, like everything he was Just the look
on
on his
the
face.
oh dude, him being late even
Yeah.
was funny. He got lost. He's like, oh, I got lost. Like that was great. So I know it sounds like I've been, shitting on the daughters a bunch, but I'm going to do it again real quick. This will be the last time. The scene in which I thought they were the worst, in my opinion, was the hell scene. I don't know what was up with the acting in that scene, but I don't know. That specific, because I rewatched that whole sequence a couple times because a lot of the robot stuff I thought was funny. But when they encounter their daughters in hell, for me, that specific scene, I don't know. There was something about their acting that bothered me. I thought it was a little too much. And then, yeah, they were doing it throughout the whole film, but for whatever reason, that scene, um, I just didn't like their performance. Now, I'm not talking about when they go to death. I thought they were great in that scene. I'm talking about when they're digging the ditches and they first, meet up with them.
Well, my only gripe with that wasn't the fact that, to me, I think they made a choice to basically act like Bill and Ted.
Yes.
And I had no issue with that. My only issue with that scene was if you go back to Bogus Journey, once Bill and Ted realized they were in hell, they were legit scared. So for them to not even be like perturbed by it at all, that was the only issue I had. I didn't have an issue with their performance per se. I just had an issue with like the whole crew. Because like when Bill and Ted went, they were terrified. And the only way they got out of hell was actually dealing with death. And then that's when it turned kind of, funny and more lighthearted as opposed to when they were getting tortured and all the other different areas of hell. That
Yeah.
was, I mean, it wasn't scary, but it was just like, oh shit, they were scared. So for all the other characters to not be scared at all and just kind of be like, oh, hey, that was my issue with that scene. Not
Well,
necessarily their performance, but the choice to have them just be like, oh, we're in hell.
I also have to note who I thought did a fine job. Kid Cudi was in the movie
Yeah.
and was fine. Like he felt like he. I don't know if he took some acting lessons or what, but I don't know. It felt natural, to him. The scenes he was in, so I
Yes.
thought that
Well,
was great.
he was in Westworld. So he's,
Yeah.
so he's been acting more, but
So they then we get to death. And man, it hit it out of them. It was perfect. I don't really have anything negative to say about that entire scene, including the daughters. To me, this was their best moment in the film. It was the one for me, a saving grace where I'm like, oh yeah, I wish there was more of that, because it was them trying to convince Death to come back to the band. And I don't know, I like the way it all played. And I also like you get little hints of a backstory in which Wild Stallions broke up, and there was lawsuits, and there was
dude, the restraining order.
fighting over the name, restraining orders. Like there's all this stuff being said but not really explained. It was funny, and I like the whole sequence. Uh, I thought it was great.
Well, even like at the end of it, when he was just like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, guys, I let fame get to my head."
Yes,
But
they. Oh, go ahead.
I just thought about it though, because remember in Bogus Journey, there was a lot of, they were terrified in hell, all this stuff was going on. But now that I think about it, there was a line towards the end when Death was talking. He said, "I got demoted."
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so perhaps the reason that hell was different or not as bad was because of that.
Well, there
So
you
it could
go.
have been. I thinking about it now, and this is something I'm going to watch multiple times, but I think that focusing so much on some of the comedy, I lost some of those things. So thinking about it as I'm, talking about lines of the movie, maybe that's, part of it. So I'm less mad about that
The
scene now.
the end of the movie was, yeah, and like I said, my issue with it was the acting. That's what bothered me. But I don't know. The end of the movie, it's corny. It's completely over the top and ridiculous, but I liked it. And it was a very it just felt like a Keanu Reeves thing, you know, like it was all this positivity. Like there was nothing hateful or edgy or it was a movie about togetherness. That's what it was. When you get to that final sequence, and yes, it's ridiculous. The conclusion is it's not Bill and Ted, it's their daughters who are basically not even the musicians. They're going to orchestrate and basically produce the greatest song. And then Bill and Ted have to give instruments to every person throughout all of time, you know, in history, and everyone's going to play together. And that final line of it wasn't so much the song as much as it was we were all playing together. And it is like I said, it's a little over the top, but you know, it puts a smile on your face. And you know, look, 2020, every if you're listening to this, you know as well as I do. It's been a crazy, shitty year. A lot of horrible things going on. It just is. And for a film to go out of its way to have just an extremely positive message in the end, and to be about togetherness, it was refreshing.
Well, yes, because it wasn't just like us. They were showing that it was the world, not
Yeah.
so showing that everybody, despite their differences, can unite behind music. I thought was a very, it's a positive message. You look at, the drummers. What was it, like 1100 BC, and she
Yeah.
was like playing drums with like thigh bones and shit. Like it was funny that the musicians were from everywhere. It wasn't just Louis Armstrong, or it took musicians from all over the place. So to kind of tie in to that, happened to get everyone united from all walks of life, I thought was a very, very cool thing. And then at the end credits, as the end
Yes.
credits were rolling, it was, I don't remember seeing this because I would have air guitared the shit out of it and tried
Yeah.
to submit it. So, but
Yeah.
it just looked like people submitting stuff. Like
It
it,
was. I looked into it. Yeah, there I missed that as well. But yeah, there was a time where you could submit a clip of like impersonating Bill and Ted, and they inserted them into the film.
which I thought was it to me. It goes back to, like you said, this year being extra shitty. Seeing people have fun was also uplifting. So this, a couple years from now, I think that it'll still be uplifting because you look back at when you saw it. So just like music in itself, if you hear like a sad song, it reminds you of whatever it is that the reason it's making you sad, or this nostalgic song that's making you laugh and smile because you remember you know driving on a road trip somewhere. Because just like when we went to Florida, there's some shitty music that we listen to, but it still makes me laugh because
Yes.
it reminds me of that. So this movie itself, I think with the music and everything at the end of it, it reminds you of a time where the year was complete and utter bullshit, but it was something to kind of rally behind. And to me, that's, although it wasn't the best Bill and Ted, I think it came out at a very good time.
It came out at a great time, and I also think even with my issues with the movie and saying yes, like I said, I think it's a high 7, a low 8 out of 10, which is a decent score. It it sits comfortably next to the other two films. In other words, it feels like a trilogy, and the film doesn't. There's nothing in it that I think will completely date it. Uh, to the extent the way it's written is what I mean. Like there's certain styles of comedy or music or whatever that really will date a film. This is something if you told me this came out 5 years ago, it works. And I think as well, if it came out, 5 years from now, I think it works. So the movie, I think, will fit very comfortably uh, as a ending point for the trilogy. Now, that was something else I wanted to ask before we wrap this up. Would you make another? Would you follow the daughters? Would you do a series? Would you do a movie, or would you just leave it alone?
I I think I would just leave it alone because it's, to me, it tied everything up. There would be no reason to continue it. Not because it would do it disjustice, because I mean, it's a goofy ass movie. It's not like it's not like Star Wars where you're trying to follow the. It's
Yeah.
this is lighthearted. It was funny, but to me, like you said, the first two were really good. But by the end of it, with all the posters and stuff, you were kind of curious of whether or not where it would go from there. Like I was curious, even watching it, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago when I got it. I actually have a DVD copy because they were given away with like Papa John's pizzas. And I remember ordering the pizza to get a copy of the fucking movie.
Oh
And
shit.
then I used a different account to order pizza and get a copy of the first movie because you got to pick which one you got. So I used two different accounts to get two different movies.
What
But I
year
got
was
both of
that?
them.
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was like 10 years ago.
I don't remember that. Oh.
Yeah. If I can find it, I'll show it to you. But it's like in a sleeve that says like Papa John's on it or whatever. And it's, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
How the hell did they not hook up for this movie? That would have been cool. Like get order enough pizza and you get like a promo code to download it or something. They should have.
That would have been funny.
Yeah. But yeah, I would not make any more movies. I think it's a solid trilogy for what it is. I really do. I think you could sit down with a family if you got kids and watch all three movies and have a good time. I think if let's say this movie does very well, let's say it makes a whole bunch of money and they're like, you know what, there's a big audience and people really enjoyed it. They want more. If I was going to do anything and let's say you wanted, obviously you set up the daughters as basically Bill and Ted. If I was going to do anything, if maybe like a Netflix show or something, but I'd keep it simple. If I was going to do anything, but that would be it. I wouldn't do any more movies.
Well, yeah, because do you remember in the 90s they had the cartoon?
Yes. Everything got a damn cartoon. Back to the Future.
Yeah. I think that a cartoon would actually be, to me, the best way to do it because there's a lot of, even if they did a more like TVMA or not even that much because to me it's a family friendly movie.
Yeah.
Like the TV 14 where it's just kind of like slapsticky and goofy, but like to me I wouldn't be mad if they did it in a cartoon form, but I really wouldn't want to see because to me a cartoon form keeps it from being as dated. If they did, a lower budget version of a TV show, you start getting into a lot of tropes and a lot of things that I think would end up dating it as opposed to now, like you said, it's not super dated. It's one of those things where it could have came out in the last 10 years and it still would have felt the same.
I think I am pretty happy with the fact that so many older 80s and 90s properties that have been brought back. The level of respect that I'm looking at this and like Karate Kid and stuff like that. It is nice to know that for the most part when they're bringing these things back, they're actually taking care of them. They're not just shitting something out because this movie. Let's be honest, it could have been horrible. It really could have. And when I heard they were doing it, I was a little concerned. But after seeing it and thinking, damn, that clearly everyone involved cared and wanted to make something that that would comfortably fit with the other two films and they'd be proud of. So that's nice. That is nice.
Yeah, I think this one will age well, and even the previous two, although they're a little more dated just by outfit.
Yes, especially the first one.
Oh yeah, but I still think that it together, all three of them are a coming of age kind of story, and I really enjoyed it.
So yeah, excuse me. So yeah, that's our thoughts on Bill and Ted. Like I said at the beginning, please hit that subscribe button. Yeah, there's so much. We're shooting a lot of videos this week. I mean, actually a little I was sitting back last night getting everything prepped, and it's like, damn, that's a lot. It's not so much that we have a lot to shoot as much as we have to watch, because for some reason the decision was made for what is it? Raised by Wolves and the Boys are going to be dropping 3 episodes apiece, so that's 6 hours over a couple of days. We're gonna have to watch.
Suck it up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, all that's coming this week. So yeah, there's like 5. We'll be uploading like 5 or 6 times this week. So definitely be subscribed so you can be notified when all that happens. Hit that
The
bell.
good news is that I don't go to work till a little later, so I don't have to stay up till midnight watching shit. I'm just gonna watch it in the morning.
Yeah, well, if anybody's listening at this point in the video, I will say our for this week the Raised by Wolves and the Boys will probably go up like the day after they air, as early as we can get them. But after that, they'll air. We'll get the videos up the night of. So that's the goal. But all right, I guess we're done.
Watch it if you haven't.
Yes.
Support Keanu and everything.
Yeah. Support PVOD. I want more movies to do this. Tenet should have done this. Damn it. All right. Bye.
Bye.